This is Scroll of Time, and today we step into a land caught between two worlds, a small nation pushed and pulled by history itself, Moldova. On one side, the European Union, promising freedom, prosperity, and a new future. On the other, Russia, determined to keep this territory under its influence, no matter the cost. A frozen conflict, a divided people, and a border that could ignite the next major geopolitical crisis in Europe. This is the true story of a country standing on a razor's edge. Welcome to Moldova, the frontier at risk, Russia's shadow over a small nation. Let us turn the scroll of time together. This is Scroll of Time, and today our journey takes us to a small but strategically vital country in Eastern Europe, Moldova. A land caught between powerful forces, burdened by history, and haunted by an uncertain future. Tucked between Romania to the west and Ukraine to the east, Moldova's very existence has become a geopolitical flashpoint. It is one of Europe's poorest nations, yet its importance far outweighs its size. To understand the risk that looms over Moldova today, we must begin with history. In the early 20th century, this region was part of the Russian Empire, then became part of Romania after World War I, and later was absorbed into the Soviet Union. Under Soviet rule, Moldova was known as the Moldovan Soviet Socialist Republic, its language and identity suppressed, its people integrated into a larger communist system. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Moldova seized its independence. But the transition was far from smooth. Political instability, economic hardship, and competing loyalties plagued the newborn republic. And then there was Transnistria, a narrow strip of land along the Dniester River, where a different story was unfolding. A war broke out, supported by Moscow, and to this day, this region remains a frozen conflict. As we follow the scroll of time, we will explore how this small nation became a battleground of influence, and why today's struggle is not just about borders, it is about power, identity, and survival. To truly grasp Moldova's current predicament, one must delve into its Soviet past. Under Soviet rule, the identity of Moldovans was both preserved and manipulated. The regime promoted a distinct Moldavian identity, separate from Romanian, while at the same time training new political elites loyal to Moscow. Economic planning under the USSR brought industrialization, but also deep inequality. Collective farms, state-owned factories, and a command economy shaped daily life. Yet cultural tensions simmered beneath the surface. Language debates, religious restrictions, and a latent desire for self-determination. In the late 1980s, as Gorbachev introduced perestroika and glasnost, national movements grew stronger. Moldovans protested for language rights, for recognition of Romanian cultural heritage, and for political reform. When the Soviet Union collapsed in December 1991, Moldova declared independence. The dream was freedom, but the reality was chaos. With a failing economy, rampant corruption, and fragile institutions, Moldova struggled to define itself. Should it align with Romania? With newly independent Ukraine? Or look to the West for help? But not all of its territory accepted the new order. In Transnistria, a revolutionary government refused to recognize Chisinau's authority. Supported by segments of the Russian-speaking population and through covert backing from Moscow, the region declared its own independence. In 1992, war broke out. Brief, brutal, and decisive. The conflict ended with a ceasefire, but no political resolution. Transnistria remained unrecognized, yet functioned with de facto autonomy, backed by Russian troops and money. That legacy of division, of competing loyalties, remains at the heart of the danger today. Transnistria, a name that to many may sound distant, but to Moldovans it is a wound that never healed. This narrow strip of land along the eastern border has been a geopolitical time bomb for decades. In Transnistria, the majority speaks Russian or Ukrainian. Many feel culturally and politically aligned with Russia rather than with Chisinau. After the 1992 war, Moscow deployed peacekeeping forces, but critics argue the presence is a facade for control. Behind this military presence lies a political structure designed to mimic a state, its own government, parliament, currency, and even army, yet it lacks international recognition. Economically, Transnistria is deeply dependent on Russia. Subsidies, trade, and energy flows all pass through Moscow's channels. This dependence gives Russia enormous leverage. Meanwhile, Moldova faces a paradox. It cannot ignore Transnistria, but it also cannot fully integrate it in its current state. Peace talks stall. Diplomatic efforts falter. The very presence of Russian troops gives Transnistria a shield. For Moscow, Transnistria is more than a territory. It is a strategic asset, a foothold in Europe, a reminder that Russia still matters in its near abroad. The longer the status quo persists, the more entrenched it becomes, and the more dangerous it is for Moldovan sovereignty. Russian influence in Moldova is not confined to military presence. It seeps into politics, media, economy, and daily life. Politically, pro-Russian parties remain powerful in Moldova. These parties often argue for closer ties with Moscow, sometimes at the cost of democratic reforms and European integration. Russia, for its part, provides financial backing, information campaigns, and promises of economic support. In the media space, the Russian narrative is strong. Television channels, radio stations, and newspapers that broadcast in Russian or Russian-aligned Moldovan media shape public opinion. Messages about protecting Russian speakers, defending traditional values, or standing up to Western interference resonate in certain demographics. Economically, energy is a decisive factor. Moldova imports a large portion of its natural gas from Russia. This dependency gives Moscow a powerful lever, the threat of price hikes, supply cuts, or contractual renegotiations. In the past, gas disputes have threatened Moldova's energy security. Furthermore, investments from Russia in Moldovan infrastructure, business, and even real estate create a web of dependencies. These economic ties are often accompanied by political strings. At the grassroots level, Russian soft power is also present. Cultural organizations, scholarships, and language programs funded from Moscow help perpetuate a pro-Russian identity among segments of the population. All of these factors combine to create a situation where Russia's influence is not just external, it is deeply embedded within Moldova's society and politics. If Transnistria is Russia's foothold, then the European Union is Moldova's hope. For years, Chisinau has looked westward, seeking greater integration, reforms, and prosperity. But this path is neither simple nor guaranteed. The EU has offered partnerships, association agreements, financial aid, visa liberalization, and political support. Many Moldovans, especially younger generations, see Europe as a gateway to a better life. They dream of mobility, economic opportunity, and democratic governance. Yet, for European integration to succeed, Moldova must address deep-seated problems: corruption, weak institutions, and political fragmentation. These internal challenges make reforms slow and sometimes painfully visible. On the international stage, Russia views EU ambitions with suspicion. A Moldova fully aligned with Europe threatens Moscow's influence. As a result, pressure mounts: diplomatic, economic, and informational. Moreover, neighboring Romania plays a significant role. With shared linguistic and cultural ties, Romania supports pro-European forces in Moldova. But this support sometimes provokes strong reactions in Moscow. The result is a delicate balancing act. Moldova must navigate between the promise of Europe and the shadow of Russia. Its future, and perhaps its very survival, depend on whether it can maintain its independence while embracing reform. Behind grand geopolitics lie the lives of ordinary people: families, farmers, students, and children, all trying to survive in a nation under constant tension. Imagine a farmer in rural Moldova who has lived through electricity cuts, gas price spikes, and political uncertainty. He worries about his grandchildren. Will they stay or leave for Europe? Picture a student in Chisinau splitting her time between Russian-language media at home and European dreams at university. She is torn between loyalty to her culture and the desire for change. In Transnistria, a middle-aged teacher watches the world around her and wonders if the peace she knows is just an illusion. She remembers the war of 1992, but she also fears what would happen if Moscow's support were to vanish. And then there is the elderly generation, those who remember Soviet days with both nostalgia and trauma. Some cling to the belief that Russia is their protector. Others, scarred by repression, long for freedom. These voices are more than statistics. They are the heart of Moldova's struggle. Every gas bill, every election, every protest reverberates in their homes. Their stories remind us that Moldova is not just a geopolitical battleground, it is a land of real people, with real fears, hopes, and dreams. Chapter 7. Scenarios for the Future and Risks, approximately 14 minutes. As Moldova stands on the brink, what comes next? There are several possible futures, each fraught with risk. Scenario 1. European integration deepens. In this scenario, Moldova accelerates reform, strengthens its institutions, and aligns more closely with the EU. With Western investment and political support, the country may reduce its energy dependence, build its civil society, and gradually reduce Russian influence. Yet, Moscow would likely view these moves as existential threats and could respond with increased pressure, economic retaliation, or political interference. Scenario 2. A frozen conflict endures. The status quo might persist. Transnistria remains autonomous, Russian troops stay as peacekeepers, and Moldova remains in a delicate balance. This would maintain Moscow's influence without provoking a full-scale crisis. But it also keeps Moldova weak, vulnerable, and divided, with little hope for long-term stability. Scenario 3. Renewed Russian assertiveness. In a worst-case scenario, Russia could escalate its influence or even attempt military intervention, especially if it perceives that Moldova is drifting too close to the West. This could be through hybrid tactics, disinformation campaigns, cyber attacks, provocations, or through more direct threats. Scenario 4. Internal reform and resistance. Moldovan society might rise. A coalition of pro-European forces, civil society, and international partners could push back against Russian influence through grassroots activism, democratic reforms, and energy diversification. This path is risky, but it could reshape Moldova's future. No matter which path unfolds, the stakes are high. Moldova's future will shape not only its own destiny, but also the balance of power in Eastern Europe. Moldova may be small on the map, but its geopolitical significance is anything but small. This nation stands at the crossroads of history, caught between two great powers. The presence of Russian troops, the shadow of Transnistria, the grip of energy dependence, they are not distant problems. They are very real, and they affect the daily lives of millions. But there is hope. European integration, internal reform, and the resilience of the Moldovan people offer a path forward. Change will not be easy, and influence will not be surrendered willingly. As we close this chapter of the Scroll of Time, remember, the future of Moldova is not predetermined. The power of its people and the support of the international community may yet decide its fate. The question remains, will Moldova remain a frontier at risk, or will it become a bridge to a peaceful democratic future in Europe? This was a Scroll of Time original. Thank you for watching. If you believe in uncovering the hidden stories that shape our world, subscribe, share, and help us keep turning the scroll of time.